Rule Galloway, Spinners of Yarns, with Tim Wells,
Hello.
poet, writer,
Man About Town.
man about town. The podcast really start off at your beginning. So you were born in Hackney with an outside loo.
That was Gary.
Yeah, I know.
But no, I've lived in Stamford Hill, St Newington, around that area for a very long time. So always had an indoor loo though.
Okay.
Not always used a loo indoors, but always had an indoor loo.
So when was that? What year were you born?
Well, it was in the 60s.
In the 60s. That's all we need to know. So when did music become of an interest to you?
Quite early on. My dad's a big record collector, so we had a lot of rock and roll, soul records, all that kind of stuff my dad was into, so I heard a lot of that. And then as I was sort of hitting teenager, was all sort of punk stuff and reggae stuff, was into that, because you kind of like to have your own thing as well, and that really kind of piqued my interest, yeah.
So was the punk interest, was that a fashion thing as well for you?
More reggae for fashion, because Soap and Water I was quite a fan of, but yeah, I mean punk to an extent, but yeah, I mean shirts with buttons are definitely a plus.
Yeah.
And without the top button done up as well, it's worth mentioning.
So what would have been the first record that you bought?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Irie Feelings, maybe? You know, the Ruby Edwards tune?
Yeah.
Maybe that, I don't know. It's going back quite a while. And I've got a lot of records since.
And that was bought in, you remember the record shop?
Nah.
No?
That's distant memories, that is. But
because I remember certainly in Dalston area there was about 3 or 4 free shops.
yeah, well,
Down
funny
Dalston
enough,
High Street there.
Funny enough, Rupee used to have the record store on Ridley Road when the market, well, it was on the market. Market's still just about there. But yeah, used to get a lot of tunes off Rupee, funny enough. And there was M&D on the corner. Third World was up there as well. So yeah, I mean, that was a good spot for buying records. It was Dalston. There's the Pie and Mash shop as well, which we used to go to all around Ridley Road. So yeah. That was fun before it got gentrified.
Yeah, but I mean, it was London for me as somebody who started coming to London in '82.
Yeah,
by myself or to see friends. It was always quite an exciting place to be because there was always something to do, you know.
Yeah, and it was quite a different beast in those days. I mean, we're just off. We're on Commercial Street now, in just by Spitalfields, which was a very different world in those days. This used to be called the Land of Look Behind. And then Oxton didn't have an H&M days either.
It certainly didn't. But you kind of like coming through for punk, but reggae was more your staple.
Yeah. I mean, there was bands like the Rots I liked, and the Members, bands like that. It always kind of had quite a bit of reggae to them, and yeah, I think it's, what was it young people call it, Harrington punk, is it?
Yeah.
Is that the right term now? But yeah, that kind of like middle bit when when music's in conversation, I kind of like that. Which I think later on the punk stuff kind of went up. It got very formulaic and dull for me, but I liked it when they were kind of messing around with stuff and different styles of music were talking to each other. I've always found that a bit more exciting. Yeah,
but I think the split up, it was kind of like probably more. It gave the working class really a more of a chance to make their statement with music. The way that it trickled down to the third wave, let's say.
Yeah.
When whether you like the music or not, things like hardcore with Discharge and their sound, the anarcho-punk sound, it gave kids an identity.
Yeah, a scruffy one.
Yeah. and a chance to create their own music, which is
actually,
to create something is great, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, that's certainly true. I think probably more for me, I was probably more into fanzines, and I mean, I did see a lot of the anarcho bands in actual fact. I didn't really like many. Zounds I really liked. I thought they were really good.
Zounds were good.
Yeah, they were a great band. But the whole, I did like the whole sort of doing it yourself aspect, and I liked a lot of the fanzines, and I would always buy a fanzine. Yeah, I think that was a good thing, which I suppose now we've got the interwebs for that.
Yeah.
But it's still not quite the same.
No. But you remember then the first fanzine that you bought?
Maybe Strangled.
What was that? Was that a London one?
No, it was the
Stranglers.
Stranglers fanzine. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, I think it might have been actually. But it's going back a while. But yeah, I would have got it at a Stranglers gig. Yeah. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah.
So that was once again breaking things down so anybody could do it. Whereas before, to do a magazine, in the 60s or the early 70s was a bit more difficult to do, or there wasn't let's say a market for it.
Well, there was fanzines in the 60s. I mean, they kind of came out of, fun enough, magicians doing little fanzines on how to do tricks, and sci-fi fanzines were quite an early thing.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, there's a sort of bit of a misnomer about punk starting to do it yourself. It definitely was a big part of punk, which is good, but...
Yeah.
And there definitely was a lot of punk fanzines, and quite a few reggae fanzines as well. Yeah.
Which doesn't get a lot of plaudits these days, I would say. If you're... Since we've just had the Modzine book or the Mod fanzine book and the punk fanzine book, that's...
Yeah, well, the old punks become academics and study themselves, so,
Did you ever run a fanzine?
Actually, I did run a fanzine. This is Saffiyah who's shouting across the pub. Yes, I did a fanzine called Stand Up and Spit. Which
Tell us more.
It ran for 3 issues of the glory years, and then after that I worked on a ska fanzine called Zoo, which a lot of people might remember, which a bloke called George Marshall started and was the editor, and I ran. Well, I didn't run it at all. I wrote a column for it and did a lot of reviews and stuff like that.
Was that then before you started doing Skinhead Times?
Yeah, that was George again. I just wrote a few little bits for Skinhead Times, but yeah. So I can't take the credit for that. That definitely was George, yeah.
So how did you then get on at school then? Was writing something that you enjoyed?
I did like it, but I think I definitely read more than I wrote at school. And reading wasn't, although it was kind of encouraged, it was encouraged to read what they wanted you to read.
Yeah.
So I tended to read what I wanted to, which my dad was always very good at. My dad was always like, well, if you want to learn something, you read 3 books about it, don't read 1. So I definitely had that, which was quite helpful in later years, i.e. now.
So you turned to poetry, or ranting poetry.
Yeah, well, I was one of the original ranters early on. So when Swells, Tiller, Jules, people like that were gigging, I was doing gigs in London, and gigging a lot with bands, and we were doing stuff in between bands, which was quite high energy. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that. Yeah, I like the immediacy of it. Yeah.
What was the inspiration there for you? Was that John Cooper Clarke?
Clarkey certainly, Linton as well, and Mikey Smith. I mean, I really liked how Michael Smith and Linton were doing stuff, obviously Jamaican accents, and it was just kind of like, well, if they can do that, then any sort of working class accent is fine. And that was definitely inspirational, without a doubt.
So, well, because when did you become a skinhead then? Or have you ever been a skinhead?
No, I've just had naturally short hair. But it'd be sort of like, just as I was kind of leaving school, really. Yeah, so I've been around 14, 15, around then,
Do you have long hair before that?
Longer, but it wasn't long.
What about the fashion? Where were you finding that? Because it is, you know, you have to go out your way to find clothes that have a certain style that you want. You know,
well, I've always loved the sort of jumble sale and a car boot sale, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm still car boot mad, to be honest. But second-hand shops back then, there was a lot of good stuff. I mean, bear in mind that you're looking at sort of 1979, sort of 1982. It wasn't that long ago from when skinhead and all that was all the rage in like late 60s. In fact, some of the shirts I've got now are older than the time difference from 1969 to 1982. So there was a lot of stuff to be found then, which definitely helped. And also, I was younger and thinner, so I could fit into a lot of stuff. It doesn't help now if stuff is old, and it's also in tiny sizes, which is just outrageous.
So, I mean, kind of like, whilst we're on this angle, how then do you find your clothes these days?
That's a bit of a sore point. I just spent 2 days earlier this week going to 6 shops that used to be there that have now gone.
Yeah.
And then I went to a shop to get some Kabichi stuff, none of which fitted, so I was just like, this isn't good. Yeah, laugh away.
So we're going back. You made the decision to perform live, and that is a nerve-wracking experience. Certainly your first gig that you do. Do you remember much about that?
It was nervous, but I mean, you see people like Ginger John was always quite exciting. Attilla was talking non-stop. So yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but when you're young, you're also kind of like, let's have it, and you're excited about doing stuff, and you're drunk as well, you know, and you're more wanting to dive in and do stuff. And I've always liked the sort of confrontation between you and the audience. It's not like you're having a go at them, but it's like, you know, let's have a bit of fun with each other. And I like the cut and thrust of that. I really don't like the sort of sit down and acceptance of a lot of readings. I like the heckles. I like the sort of conversation.
Yeah.
What's changed for like the current generations of like young poets then? Because you don't see as much of that.
There are a lot of good young poets, don't get me wrong, but I think what's kind of annoyed me with poetry, and it's not specific to young poets in the slightest, but there's a big rush now for acceptance. So people are very keen to get academic, people are very focused on awards, and it's kind of like, it's everything we're against. I'd much rather see the sort of, you know, the Lintons and the Marquis Smiths, the people who've got something to say and rail against it. Yeah, don't be genteel, go for it.
Is that why you wanted to get up there, was to make a point? Were you political, your first poetry?
In broad strokes, in the same way that punk and reggae records were, really. I mean, you're still young then, so you're still working out things, but I mean, you know what you're angry about, you don't always specifically know why.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, there was definitely, I mean, I was no singer and I was no musician, but I definitely had stuff to let out, so that was coming out in poetry, yeah.
And that would have been quite exciting at that time with Stephen and Attilla John coming through.
For me at least, what other people thought, I can't say. but no, Attilla was always worth seeing, Seething was always worth seeing, like Jules,
Benjamin,
Zephaniah, yeah, I mean, Benjamin was great. I mean, like, policemen keep on kicking me to death. I mean, that's yeah, I'll never forget seeing him do that quite a few times actually, but yeah, I mean, that's stayed in my head ever since I first saw it. Yeah, and Jules was always quite a fearsome presence, and still is. You know, Porky was good. Yeah, lots of different styles, different flavours. Yeah.
And one thing certainly about London back then, in comparison to tonight, there was quite a big live gig scene.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, you could go out every night of the week to see a band.
Yeah, I mean, we were in those days. Yeah, I mean, there's people. Funny enough, we were talking about the Club Foot the other day, and I was always like, no, the Clarendon Hotel underneath was even better. And there was a pub that had 2 venues. It was, you know,
yes.
Yeah. We saw this before the internet and all that, obviously. But I mean, we were going out 4 or 5 times a week and seeing bands. Not even bands we liked. It was just like, oh, let's go out and do something. Yeah.
So which venue do you miss the most?
Probably the George Roby in Finsbury Park.
And that, when did that? That became really a live music venue.
Yeah.
For bands that you wanted to go, probably early to mid 80s.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of. It was a good pub for a lock-in before that. So it was like an old Irish pub that everyone, we knew it had a lock-in, so we were good for that. So we used to drink in there anyway. And then, they had a lot of punk bands on, a lot of ska bands, some metal bands, all that kind of stuff. It was just a good, messy community pub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is for as a youth, that's what you want. You want a pub to be a bit messy and.
It's how you actually learn things. I think pubs now they're too. Not that a clean pub is a bad thing, but pubs are quite cliquey now. I think as a young person, certainly in our age, you kind of learn how to behave by watching older people in the same spaces.
Yeah.
And when we were going to pubs, there was all sorts of different people in it.
Yeah.
And you kind of learn, I can push this, I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's like the thing, you're an adult when you can stand on the carpet in the pub. Yeah.
We're similar ages in the fact that what we could do back in the early 80s, we might not be able to do in modern times.
Like afford a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly not helping. I mean, venues now, you can't even afford to have a drink. There's hardly any venues for small bands anymore, which is, which again kind of knocks on the head young people coming up, which is sad, Even if they don't like the music, they should at least be doing something and having something to say and a chance to do it.
Yeah. But they kind of like talking like you didn't think you were a good enough singer. You did get yourself involved in a group early 80s.
Yeah, but it was awful.
Was it?
Can we find us on YouTube?
Obviously not.
But it's. I mean, it goes for a bit of money now, doesn't it? That album.
No idea.
No
idea.
How did that come about?
Just through doing the poetry, really, and then I was into reggae as well. The others in stuff in the band was into reggae as well, and we did a few live things. And then Matt Professor got onto us and sort of said, "Why don't you use some of my backing tracks?" And we did, and we kind of lucked into it, really.
Yeah.
And it was fun for a little while, and then it wasn't.
Why didn't it? What happened in the end? Why was there no second album?
There was 2 unreleased tracks, if I remember rightly, but we'd fallen apart by then.
Were you in Blaggers at the beginning?
Very early on, but again, I wasn't a good singer.
Okay.
So, no.
So you maintained the poetry side during the 80s and.
Yeah, I was much more into that, to be honest, and I can do that on my own. I'm not always good with people, but on my own, I can make that happen.
How do you think the skinhead scene then developed in London in the 80s? Because it went through different trends to back into really what the skinhead scene was all about in the late 60s.
Yeah, it was as I'm sure you remember, quite a difficult time because there was a lots of different things, all of which hopefully had the same name, which was fun. But I was and quite a few other people were always more into the sort of reggae side of things and the soul side. So it was really kind of mid 80s when like Hard as Nails and Shard Street were coming up. I think things really changed. And it was kind of like, it's you don't have to listen to all this kind of rubbish that's being churned out now. And there was some good music coming up as well, and let's embrace that as well as the good stuff that like good reggae music, good soul music. You don't have to dress like a Gumby. Yeah. Let's have a bit of self-respect. There's no bad thing.
And things got friendlier, would you say?
Not initially.
But that was when I first started coming to London. It was very territorial.
Yeah.
You know, if I was drinking in South East London in Forest Hill area, Lewisham area, then you always had to be on your edge about you know, where you were. And
yeah, I think that was true, whether he's a skinhead or not. Though I mean, London was like that. Yeah, definitely. But that didn't help.
no. But the whole Skinner thing was split up by south of the river and north of the river and East London.
Yeah.
And football as well, kind of like played a part.
Football definitely did. I mean, yeah, there was a whole lot of trouble around football at gigs. Yeah, but I mean, we was all more into the sort of rocksteady, reggae, that kind of stuff, and we had our own little dances. It was like the Penny Black used to do stuff at Dublin Castle.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of weird how that's now became the mainstream, whereas at the time we were very much not.
Yeah,
but no bad thing.
You also you support Leyton Orient, and I remember watching Orient play against Mansfield Town in '77. So you were up in the second division at that point, and
we're back.
And you're back. But you must have just sold Laurie Cunningham at that point.
Yeah, because Cunningham was quite an inspirational player.
And you had John Shadozy.
John Shadozy was there. Yeah.
You know, so it must have been quite exciting. Why did he choose Leyton rather than West Ham or Tottenham or Arsenal?
Because it started out as Clapton Orient.
Okay.
So when I was living in Spring Hill with Douglas, it was quite close to the Orient original ground at Millfields.
Okay.
In Clapton. Yeah.
So when did you go to your first game? Mid-70s?
Yeah, I would have thought so, yeah. Maybe. Must have been.
How's it changed since then? Because football has changed, but Orient have never really peaked up too high in the league placing.
We was in First Division in '81.
Okay.
When we had those little white shirts with the red braces, remember that?
Yeah.
And then actually, I quite like Orient now because the ground I quite like when he sold the corners, so they've got like flats in them now.
Okay.
So there's actually been a bit of investment in the ground. The atmosphere is pretty good at Orient. I like that. You're still right on the pitch when you sit there. So I think it's done all right, actually, in terms of modern football. It's done all right.
So have they then not embraced modern football as maybe some of the bigger clubs have, or?
It's still good community at Orient. You can, you're still right on the edge of the pitch.
Yeah.
In terms of seating, which I like. You can get a beer. Yeah, it's all right, actually.
So, football, fashion, music, they're your key things. Start your poetry into your writing. You've released a number of your poetry on books over the years. Mm-hmm. You then decided to publish your first book of fiction.
Well, actually, I lucked into that.
Did you?
Yeah. So I was doing a panel talk about the media, and I was representing fanzines actually, and then there was a publisher from Unbound who was also on the panel, and I threw a Guardian journalist under the bus, which, to be honest, was pretty easy and a lot of fun. And then afterwards, a couple of us went to the pub, and I was chatting with the publisher, John, and he was saying that they were just bringing out Dave Hill's autobiography, so I was quite excited about it. Then he said to me, what was I working on? And I just said as a joke, I've been working on a book about a skinhead werewolf, and when the full moon's out, his sideburns get really big. And John was like, that sounds great, can we have it? And I was like, I'm joking. And then he was like, could you write it? And I was like, yeah. So I lucked into a book deal there with that. So that's how that came around. And then I went with it. And initially I started writing it, and I was really just doing a bad spoof of Suede, funny enough. And then I was about 6 chapters in, and it just kind of got more and more autobiographical.
Yeah.
But obviously with a werewolf in it. And then I just pulled back and then rewrote it. and kind of went that angle with it, yeah. And it was only really after the first one came out, people were kind of picking up about how picky I'd been with clothes in it, which I hadn't really noticed I was doing first time round. But then I was like, are you sure? And I read back through it, and I was actually, yeah, I was very picky on clothes. But I'm always the kind of person, you know, when you see in war films and they have like the wrong tank,
Yeah.
it drives me mad, that kind of stuff. So and it's the same way with clothes. I mean, you know, I don't want to be like those people with like, oh yeah, this is all set in 1979 and they've all got the top button done up and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I was like, no, if we're going to do it, let's do it right.
Is that purism or autism?
Probably both. I mean, I admit it's a niche interest.
So you kind of like you chose for some reason an old hippie who lived in a commune, Lena Lovitch, as
Actually, I deliberately chose Lena Lovitch,
Yeah.
who bites this geezer to become a werewolf, because I wanted someone who was a bit gothy, had a sense of humour, and actually had a pretty tight band. And me and Phil used to go see Lena Lovitch a couple of times. And I thought, yeah, she'd be all right. And because she's still alive, we actually had to get her permission to put her in the book. And so I got in touch with her, and actually I met her, which actually got me on a guest list for an next gig in London, actually. And I sent her the chapter she was in, and she was like, oh, when's this book set? And I'm like, oh, it's set in 1979. And she went, that's fine, I wasn't a vegetarian then, but that's okay. So yeah, she was lovely, actually. And yeah, no, I was happy she was in it, actually. Yeah, she was the right person, I think.
which is quite central to the book. So in '79, it's the clothes, the bands you went to see, the pubs you were drinking in, connected to your experience.
Largely, I mean, obviously it's fictional, and
Yes.
you know, but there's a large chunk of stuff that I did in there. Yeah, I mean, names and places have been changed and all that to an extent, but there's a lot of truth in it. Yeah.
So when I would say that was fairly successful for you.
It did all right, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's successful enough to do the second one, and yeah, it's. I think as well, people our age, they've got the records, they've got the T-shirts, but we want the same but different.
Yeah.
And it kind of did that, and also I think a lot of people, you might be purists, do pick up on details, and we kind of, you know, when even like the New English Library stuff in the 70s, which as quality rubbish, they are quality rubbish, and the details are all wrong. So it's kind of nice to go through and get the details right. And so actually, I mean, researching is probably my favourite bit of writing. I really do like researching and just kind of revisiting stuff, going back to places, digging around in old fanzines, all that kind of stuff I really enjoyed. I mean, the one thing I'd forgotten was the kind of shoes that mod girls wore. But luckily, I was just put it on the interweb, and then loads of people came back.
Yeah.
Actually, it was Polly in Dublin. It was easy on my feet. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
So that was the second book was set in 1980.
1980, yeah. And that was more of the same, but with mod witches in it.
Yeah.
As well. Actually, in the book, she lives just up the road here. But yeah.
So is there a third one?
Not at the moment. I am writing a third book at the moment, but it's a portmanteau of haunted items bought at various car boot sales. So there may be some skinhead stuff in it. Wait and see. But there probably will be another specifically skinhead one at some point, because they're quite fun to write. I mean, especially with lockdown, I found them quite cathartic, really. It was just, yeah. I mean, writing when the Crash fan got killed, I could write that again quite happily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Record collecting is quite synonymous for you, or quite important for you, because I've seen you over the years at many record fairs, digging and trying to find an elusive record at the right price, I would say.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I like the car boot sale, I like a record fair, and yeah, I mean, definitely a record collector. And again, I think records are kind of linked with certain place it at certain times, certain people. So the right record, it does carry a lot with it.
Yeah.
And that's certainly when I was writing, I was quite picky on purpose about what music I put in it. And that was actually that was funny. In the first one, the editor went through everything, and he goes, there's one record you've mentioned, and it didn't come out on this album till 1981, and the book's set in 1979. And I was like, yeah, but it came out on single. And he's like, yeah, fair enough.
But it's very, it wasn't, albums probably really took off 80s onwards. Kind of a lot of bands just did the single and...
Yeah, I mean, reggae stuff's always been singles rather than albums anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And a lot of singles.
Had a lot of singles.
Well, no, there was a lot of reggae singles released on 7-inch,
Oh, tons and tons. But when I was writing, when I was working on chapters, I'd write in bursts because it's Pulp Fiction, so I kind of like the energy of it. But every day I would write for 3 albums, and it'd be 2 reggae albums and a punk one, or 2 punk albums and a reggae one. But they were all, for me, for the first book, they were all from 1979, and from the second one, they're all from 1980. So it was all in my headspace. Yeah, that was definitely going on.
Which shop do you think would be most synonymous with London and finding good quality music for you?
What now?
Back 80s, 90s.
You know what? Probably Rock On Records. I miss a lot in Camden. Yeah. That was more sort of soul and punk stuff than reggae stuff, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Rock On, that was just fun going there, to be honest. And you learnt a lot of stuff there. And also Compendium Books was around the corner.
Yeah.
So I think, the combination of those two, it's actually how you learn stuff when we were younger. And also, we didn't have the internet, so we could spend 10, 15 years looking for a record that you'd only ever heard about, and there was rumours about it, and we didn't know what the singers we were into looked like, and there'd be like some blurred picture of like, oh, this is Dennis Walks. Never knew what he looked like. But yeah, and there'd be some like blurry picture in a fanzine. Yeah, so finding all that stuff out was quite exciting. And then reggae-wise, right? I mean, bought a lot of stuff from Camden Market, and Rupee bought a lot of stuff from. So yeah, I mean
that was the exciting thing was going to a record fair and not really having the knowledge. The internet wasn't there, and just seeing something blind, just liking the label, and thinking that's good, I'll have that, or seeing the producer's name, knowing the producer, liking something else that he'd done. So that's I'll take that one.
Yeah, and also going to dances, you kind of, people were getting checked out, so you kind of like, oh yeah, so this is Joe Gibbs stuff. I like most of that. Then you start seeing records produced by Joe Gibbs, so you start getting into that. So yeah, and Gladdy's shop as well.
Where was that?
In Stoke Newton, Gladdy Wax had a shop. That was always pretty good. Yeah, and obviously Gladdy still does run a sound system as well. So that was always quite educational.
So how do you think London has changed since the early 80s? Or is it you growing up as a kid? It's a different beast now to what it was?
Well, since I've been living here, the rent's like gone mental. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. Pie and mash shops are dying. That's pretty grim. Pubs ain't what they were. The price of drink is crazy.
£6.10.
£6.10. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and it's just, time was we could go out with like a tenner, and you come back on a Sunday morning, Yeah.
I think it was 50p a pint when I started drinking.
Yeah, I think things are a lot more isolated now. I mean, partly because I think people spend more time online and stuff, so they're probably not isolated in the sense that they don't talk to anyone, but I think the physicality and community that we were used to is very different now. And things, things don't stay the same. They should change. That's all fine. But
is that then? It's kind of like an interpretation could be that, you know, whilst we were growing up and before that, they needed strong communities to keep us busy and to keep us motivated. Now maybe, you know, 30 years on, we're not as needed as much as we were.
I think that's certainly part of it. I mean, certainly in London now we've had loads of like housing estates that have just been cleaned out and people sent up north and the Midlands and all that, where, you know, they've got no one they know out there. Yeah, that's pretty horrendous, to be honest.
So it's kind of like your poetry gigs now will be totally different to what they were in the early 80s.
There's still some good ones, there's still a few, but it's not like, because bands now, they don't really get to do the small gigs they used to, you know, and it used to be, we'll have a couple of poets on whilst we're changing the drum kit over and all that. I mean, you know, we were doing stuff like with the Dead Kennedys, we were doing gigs with them when the Redskins and the Dead Kennedys played, we were doing poetry in between and stuff like that. You just don't get that kind of stuff anymore.
It's more of a Mumford and Sons and Coldplay kind of like, that's how bands break through now. If you've got some money in your back pocket or your parents have a bit of cash, you can...
Well, like the alternative scenes now have just been like slowly thinning the crowd, and it's through like the changes in the industry, labels, things like that, and it started slowly and now we're very much at like the other end of it.
Yeah, also I think it's a lot harder now, even though the technology's there, it's harder now, I think, for young people to kind of make their own. I think they can make the music, but getting the music out to people, it's not like you can make a record like when we were young. Because one thing, people don't really have record players so much these days, but even with like online files and stuff, I mean, are they getting out? I don't know.
Yeah. But I think it would be, you know, when we were growing up, people could sign on and build their band up whilst they were signing on, or be an artist, or be a poet, whichever format they wanted to be creative with. They could do it and live to a degree.
I mean, you could scrape by on a
25 quid a week.
You could scrape by on that, or if you had a little job, you could scrape by on that and go out a little bit. I think now even young people I know are working. They're working 2 or 3 Mickey Mouse jobs, and they're knackered. They're working hard for nothing.
Yeah.
You know. Well, I know we had it bad, but I think they've got it worse.
Yeah. I think it was much better for human beings when there was a strong community to work within than being a bit polarised. You know, 30, 40 years later, because I think certainly after that first lockdown that you realise how important other people are to you as a human being, you know, so it's good to be around people, you know. And
well, some people.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But that was very much the same in the early 80s as well, you know.
That's very true, yeah. Yeah.
So, do you do a lot of corporate gigs?
Not a lot, to be honest. I mean, if the right corporation pays with the right money, I'm not in a position to say no, but to be honest, no.
But do you have an agent then? Have you ever had had an agent?
That is one good thing with the interwebs, is you don't really need to have an agent. So stuff comes to me, so I can mess it up myself.
Right. And that is obviously one of the big revolutionary changes has been the internet to get your message across.
Yeah, I think when it's done well, that can be very good. I liked like the Lovely Eggs. I was on one of their Eggs TV's things recently. That was quite fun. I like their sort of hour-long YouTube shows. It's got all sorts of people on it. Quite a random mix of people, which is always good. Yeah.
I mean, I think I had that idea about 5 years ago for the shop that I had, to do something over 2 hours in the shop every Friday and invite loads of guests round, you know. I think it's that community thing again, you're pulling people in to give them a voice.
And a couple of reggae shops now, they're doing like, down at Lion Vibes, they do like Selectors Thursday, where people just like roll up with some tunes and just stand behind a counter. Yeah. And it's like, you know, old time record shops where you can go down and just spend a day listening to music, having a beer, meeting a few mates. So it's part and parcel of it.
I mean, after having a record shop for a number of years, it's more of a social gathering than than
Yeah.
a financial reward.
It should be, but I just don't think the amount shops have to pay for rent now, they can afford to have like people like us sitting around having a beer,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
The political side is also another ever-changing scene. So kind of like what was at the early 80s is no longer not in the strength or power that they had, or maybe they are, but in different disguise, in different clothing.
Well, I think the last few months the unions are making a comeback, which is definitely a good thing. I think that definitely was a constructed change from where, late 70s, the unions are pretty strong. And it's weird looking back how the most socially mobile time in the country was the 70s, which we wouldn't have thought it back then.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, for all the wokeness and right-onness and modern Britain we live in, it's just social movement ain't happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
But
stuck.
what do you think of the 15-minute cities?
The what?
Or the 15-minute zones?
What are they?
The oolies or whatever they call.
I live in London, I don't drive.
Yeah. But
I haven't got a clue. I don't know anything about it.
But it's potentially could change the way that we move freely.
And we don't even have a tube station where I live, so it's like...
So where do you think Orient have just got promoted to the Division 2?
Yep, glory years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think you'll get on there? Because it changes.
I think I think was probably the right level for us. We had a really good season last season. I'm sure we'll have good ones and bad ones, as we normally do moving forward. But it was nice to see us go. I mean, it was only not too long ago we were out of the league altogether.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice to come back. And we had that awful Italian running us, which they had to change the rules for the whole football league. He was so bad. Another win.
And you had Barry Hearn as well, didn't you?
I liked Barry Hearn actually. Yeah, I mean he was Barry Hearn, but I liked what he did actually. I thought he was all right. Yeah, I think.
Did you ever get involved in any Orient fanzines there?
I did write a couple of things. There was a Leighton Orienteer, I wrote a couple of articles for him, but nothing to write home about. I wrote it for the fanzine, I didn't write it home. But no, I did a couple of little bits, but no, I wasn't really properly involved or anything like that. I did buy it pretty regular. And I used to like when Saturday comes, that was always quite entertaining. When it was on paper and all that, yeah. So it used to be that football fanzine shop, remember that in
Sports Pages.
That's the one, yeah.
It's just the best, one of the best shops around at that point.
Yeah, that was always
the
good for
90s.
me. Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Tim Wells, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.